They tried to strip her of honor in front of everyone, but she refused to bow. "Take that uniform off. Right now." The words cracked like a gunshot across the blistering Arizona heat. Lieutenant Jason Miller's voice rolled over the training grounds of Fort Thunder, sharp enough to silence even the desert wind. All eyes turned to the lone woman standing among 30 of America's most elite warriors. She didn't flinch. Her light brown hair was tied into a simple bun. Her uniform, worn thin, patched and frayed, looked like it had survived 100 battles. She was a black woman, unshaken by the jeers and whispers, radiating a quiet defiance that no threat could bend. Every soldier present felt it. The impossible mix of respect, tension, and curiosity, wondering what had forged this woman who refused to bow. "I said, take it off," Miller barked, stepping forward. His 6'4" frame cast a shadow over her smaller figure. "Civilians don't earn the right to wear this." His finger jabbed toward her chest like a loaded weapon. Around them, soldiers laughed, a cruel chorus rising into the scorching air. Emily lowered her battered backpack. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but from the lingering nerve damage that had haunted her for years. She began unbuttoning her jacket. The mockery grew louder with every movement, but when the fabric slid from her shoulders, the laughter died instantly. Time itself seemed to freeze. There, etched into her back, was a tattoo no one could mistake. A black skull, the Roman numeral 2 carved beneath it. The words, "Death Brigade, Sole Survivor." 12 blood-red stars burned like fresh wounds. It was Master Sergeant Robert Bob Daniels who saw it first. The hardened combat veteran who had stared down warlords, insurgents, and death itself went pale. His legs buckled. And then, to everyone's disbelief, he fell to his knees. Within 30 minutes, every arrogant soldier mocking Emily Carter would understand exactly why the most feared man on base had just bowed before the woman they'd ridiculed. If seeing Emily humiliated like this makes your blood boil, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories of hidden warriors who refuse to break. And if you truly want to support, the thanks button below is a powerful way to keep these stories alive. Now, let's return to Emily, because what she does next will silence the entire base. The morning at Fort Thunder Special Operations Training Center had begun like any other. The desert sun was already climbing past 45°C, baking the sand into glass. 30 hand-picked candidates had gathered for their briefing, ready to prove themselves worthy of the military's most dangerous missions. That's when Emily arrived. She parked her faded pickup in the visitor's lot. Its paint scorched and peeling from years under desert suns. Her scuffed boots looked like they'd been resoled twice. Her uniform stripped of rank patches or insignia. Nothing about her presence said elite. Everything about her screamed outsider. She signed in with a trembling hand. Her contractor badge barely glanced at before the guard waved her through. Private Madison Clark spotted her first, phone already in hand. "Oh my God, you guys have to see this," she whispered, live streaming to thousands. The camera zoomed in on Emily trudging toward the grounds. "Some old lady just showed up in thrift store BDUs. This is going to be hilarious." At 24, Madison was as polished as she was ruthless online. Even under the desert heat, her blonde hair was flawless. To her, Emily wasn't a threat. She was content. The mockery spread. Sergeant Daniel Torres, a 28-year-old tactical prodigy with deployments under his belt, smirked. $10 says she's here for sensitivity training," he called out loudly, making sure Emily could hear. "Look at those hands shaking. Can't even hold a rifle steady?" Emily ignored them, her gait steady despite the tremor in her fingers. She headed for the equipment table where rifles and gear awaited inspection. Her hands moved with sharp precision, checking each weapon like second nature, movements too fast. Too clean, too professional. Watching her, Corporal Brandon Hayes, infamous prankster of the candidates, grinned. "Watch this." He nudged the table, sending rifles clattering to the ground. "Oops, sorry, ma'am. Didn't see you there. Maybe stick to the admin office where it's safe for civilians." Emily crouched, methodically retrieving each weapon. Her fingers worked fast, snapping pieces back into place with flawless care, Daniels noticed. The way she handled the rifle wasn't casual. It was surgical, automatic, the way only a combat veteran moves. But Instructor Matthew Brooks, the 35-year-old former ranger, wasn't impressed. Striding over, his contempt was razor sharp. "Ma'am, this area is restricted. Whatever paperwork you're here for, it belongs in an office. Not in my training grounds." Emily looked up, her scarred voice steady. "I'm here under authorization from Colonel William Harris. I'm observing." "Observing?" The crowd parted as Lieutenant Jason Miller arrived, towering, furious, hungry for blood. "Do you even understand where you are? This is Special Operations Selection, not a tourist attraction. And what gives you the right to wear that uniform?" The soldiers gathered tighter, eager for spectacle. Phones rose, Betts whispered. Emily ignored him, continuing her inspection. Her indifference fanned his rage. "I'm talking to you." Miller's voice cracked across the desert. "That uniform is earned in blood, not borrowed." "Take it off, now!" Phones streamed live. Comments poured in. "Stolen Valor Grandma about to get wrecked." Emily turned at last. Her scar down her jaw caught the sun, her brown eyes calm but unyielding. "This uniform," she rasped, "was issued to me." "By who? A surplus store?" Torres sneered, earning more laughs. "With all due respect, which isn't much, you don't belong here. We train for life and death, not corporate retreats." Behind her, Brandon Hayes kicked her backpack, spilling papers, a medical kit, and a metal case that clinked ominously on the concrete. "Oops," he mocked. Emily bent to retrieve them. Her jacket rode up just enough to reveal the edge of black ink. Daniels froze. Recognition flickered in his eyes. He knew that pattern, that shape. But Miller wasn't done. He stepped closer, shadow looming. "Remove that uniform. Now!" Phones zoomed in. The crowd waited for her to crumble. Emily stood, steady eyes meeting his. Her trembling hands moved to her buttons. "Very well," she said, voice soft but cutting. The jacket slipped free. Gasps rippled. The tattoo spread across her back, black and red, unmistakable in its authority. Daniel's breath caught. His hands, steady under fire, steady in war, began to shake. Then, before anyone could process what they were seeing, he dropped to one knee. The silence was absolute. 30 elite soldiers froze, unsure of what they were witnessing. Emily swallowed a pill from her case, medication only prescribed to those who had stared death in the face and somehow walked back. "The kind reserved for the dying who refuse to die." "Sergeant Daniels," Brooks barked, his composure cracking. "Explain yourself." Daniels' eyes never left the tattoo. His voice broke. "Death Brigade. It can't be." The tension thickened. Emily stood tall, jacket in her hands, sweat making the tattoo glisten like fresh blood. "Get up, Sergeant," Miller snapped, but even his voice faltered. Daniels rose slowly, eyes shifting from tattoo to face. "Lieutenant, stop. You don't understand who you're dealing with." "It's just a tattoo," Madison whispered, live stream still running, though her voice trembled. Torres shook his head, eyes narrowing. "No, that's Special Operations insignia, but not one I've ever seen," Brandon smirked. "Maybe she got it at the same place she bought her uniform." "Shut your mouth." Daniels roared, fury cracking like thunder. "You ignorant child. You have no idea what that marking means, what it cost. Even legends break." And Robert Bob Daniels, the legend among legends, was shaking. Emily set her jacket aside. The tattoo burned in full view, the skull, the 12 stars, the carved words, "Sole Survivor." And that's when Colonel William Harris stepped into the chaos. His command voice cut like steel. "Someone explain what in God's name is happening here." Daniels saluted sharply, trembling. "Colonel, we need to clear this area, now. This is beyond their clearance." "Sergeant," Harris shot back, "I'll decide what's classified." His eyes locked on Emily. "Ma'am, ID. Now." Emily nodded, pulling out her battered leather wallet, papers, badges, then silence. A black challenge coin, etched in red, bearing the same skull as her tattoo. Only 13 of those coins had ever been minted. And after Operation Hellgate, only one remained. Colonel Harris's face drained of color. "Dear God, you're her. You're Ghost 7. Daniels snapped to attention, saluting with machine-like precision. "Major Carter, I didn't recognize you. Forgive me." Have you ever been underestimated like Emily, mocked, dismissed, and then revealed the truth no one saw coming? Emily's hand slid to her side almost without thinking, lifting the edge of her tank top to reveal the other scars the morning sun hadn't yet shown. Bullet holes, shrapnel gouges, the hard geometry of a night everyone else pretended didn't exist. The tremor in her fingers suddenly made sense. Not age or frailty, but the raw nerve damage left by the blast that had cleaned out her team. But Jason Miller's face flickered through confusion, disbelief, and then a slow, chilling horror as reality closed on him. He had publicly humiliated one of the most decorated operators in recent memory. A woman who had survived what 13 elite soldiers hadn't, Sergeant Daniel Torres muttered, his technical mind trying to process the impossible. Death Brigade was supposed to be erased, classified beyond top secret, a phantom program that never officially happened. Before anyone could argue, Emily lifted the shirt a fraction more. 12 tiny stars appeared in neat rows, each stamped with initials beneath them: Jackson, Martinez, Chen, Williams, Brown, Thompson, Garcia, Anderson, Taylor, Wilson, Moore, Davis. She recited each name without falter, voice steady though the memory pressed behind it. 12 stars for 12 brothers who never came home. 12 reasons she was still standing. The training ground fell into a silence so complete, it felt like an accusation. Instructor Matthew Brooks was the first to find his voice. "Ma'am, we had no idea. You weren't supposed to," Emily said flatly. "My identity has been suppressed for 5 years to protect ongoing operations and assets still in the field." She swept her gaze to Colonel William Harris. "Colonel, I need to discuss why I'm really here." Harris blinked, thought for a second, then made the call that changed the morning. "Clear the training area. Candidates to Barracks 3, stand by. Senior staff, my office in 15. But as the crowd began to move, Miller stepped forward, the swagger gone from his shoulders, replaced by something awkward and small. "Ma'am, Major Carter, sir, I owe an apology. What I did today was—" Emily cut him off gently. "You did what you were trained to do. You challenged someone you believed out of place. That's your job. Maybe now you'll realize that appearances lie. The weakest-looking person may be the deadliest when it matters. The strongest? Not always present when sacrifice is required." The candidates spread out slowly, reluctant and unsure. The live stream long since shut off by Private Madison Clark, whose face had drained of color as the truth landed. Corporal Brandon Hayes, the base joker who'd kicked Emily's bag, looked nauseous. As the dust settled, Master Sergeant Robert Bob Daniels approached with careful steps. "Major, why are you back? After Hellgate, why come here?" Emily stared into the shimmering distance. "Because Death Brigade Verestein is being reformed," she said softly. "And someone needs to pick them. Someone who knows what the job costs." Daniels exhaled sharply. "Another suicide op?" Emily nodded. "A nuclear facility, hardened, terror-controlled, no practical extraction. 13 volunteers needed. I came like this so I could see how they behave when they think no one important is watching." Colonel Harris, returning after issuing orders, asked what she'd seen. Her smile was a small, tired thing. Potential. Problems. Mostly young soldiers who haven't yet learned that some battles are against our own assumptions. She shrugged on her jacket, hiding the tattoo once more. "Give me 30 minutes to contact the Pentagon. Then we'll decide who's suitable." As she walked toward the command building flanked by Harris and Daniels, the base felt heavier, as if the morning had been an initiation test and the recruits had failed before they even knew what was being tested. An hour later, in her quarters, Emily sat at a secure terminal, fingers steady enough to run the complex clearances that still let her speak to the people who mattered. The face that lit the screen was General Patricia Morrison, no relation to Lieutenant Miller despite the name. "Ghost 7, the general said without a greeting. "Report. Initial assessment complete," Emily replied. 30 observed under stress. 5 show channelable aggression. 3 have technical promise. 1 displays protective instinct. The rest? She shook her head. Followers. Dangerous when the wrong leader emerges. The general's professional mask eased for a heartbeat. Your recommendation? Secondary assessment, non-standard scenarios. I need to see how they behave when a teammate appears genuinely in danger, when orders and morals collide. Approved, the general said. You have authority, her voice softened. Are you sure? After Hellgate, you could walk away. Emily's fingers found the empty place where the stars marked her team. Someone has to select them, Patricia. Someone who's paid the price. The connection closed, and Emily watched the candidates cluster beneath the base lights. No idea how many understood that the real selection had already begun. Death Brigade had never been merely a test of skill or courage. It demanded total surrender. Your life, your identity, even your existence could be expunged in service of a mission bigger than you. 13 men had accepted that truth 5 years ago. 12 paid with everything, and 1 carried the weight of their names. Now Emily had to find 13 more who could carry the same burden. A knock broke her reverie. Enter, she called. Lieutenant Jason Miller stepped in, posture changed, humbled, not defeated. Lieutenant, Emily said, turning. You're out of uniform. He glanced down, puzzled, then understood she meant his attitude. Ma'am, I came to apologize properly. I expected what I did this morning to go the way it did. Emily studied him with eyes thickened by loss. Your aggressive, dominant, apex predator behavior. It's kept you alive. Tell me, have you ever been truly afraid? Miller's jaw worked. Yes, first deployment. Convoy hit an IED. We lost 2. How did you react? She pressed. I froze for 3 seconds. Then training took over. 3 seconds, she echoed. I froze 0 when Hellgate detonated. I'd already made peace with death before we entered that valley. When you accept death as possible, fear loses its power. The real question, can you operate when survival isn't part of the plan? He was silent a long time. I don't know, he said finally. That's the first honest thing you've said. It's a start, Emily answered. If this chills you, share this with someone who needs proof that strength hides in strange places. The reveal to come, she added, would change everything. The afternoon punished them as she returned to the training ground in full uniform that finally showed her rank. The formation stood under a sun that felt like a furnace, faces a mixture of curiosity, shame, and fear. Emily took the front position, the tremor never leaving, every movement precise. Colonel Harris and the senior staff formed a ring behind her that made the moment feel ruinous and righteous at once. Gentlemen, she began, and then louder, and ladies, nodding to Madison and the other women standing stiffly. This morning you watched assumptions collide with reality. You judged by clothing and age. In normal training, we'd correct, move on. This is not normal. She let the silence sit heavy. You've been flagged as potential candidates for a mission that statistically most of you won't survive. Death Brigade isn't a name, it's a contract. It means completing the objective no matter what. It means choosing actions a human heart isn't built for. Private First Class. Maria Santos, quiet and observant, raised her hand. Ma'am, why tell us this if it's classified? Emily's smile was flat. Because lying is worse. You deserve to know what you're volunteering for. She laid out numbers. Death Brigade had run 14 iterations in 20 years. Average survival, 15%. Her unit, 7%. Then she tapped the tablet and a photograph filled the screen. 13 silhouettes before a helicopter, dated March 5th, 2011. 2 days later, 12 were dead. Not failure. They completed the mission, destroyed a plan to detonate dirty bombs that threatened cities, but the intel was wrong and the price paid was total. She let them see faces. Marcus Jackson, sniper. Luis Martinez, demolitions. David Chen, comms. Human names behind the myth. They had gone knowing the odds and still went. The formation held a silence so thick it felt like the desert itself pressed in. The question, Emily said softly, is this. Are you willing to be erased? To have your family told you died in a training accident? To be a footnote in a classified file? The hush lasted until Miller stepped forward, voice steady. Ma'am, permission to speak. Granted. He swallowed. This morning I showed disrespect, poor judgment. But you also saw me when I'm under stress, raw and unfiltered. If this selection is about who we are when we think no one's watching, you saw me at my worst. I'm still here and I volunteer. If cities are at risk, someone has to do it. Emily measured him long before she said, "Return to formation, Lieutenant." Over the next hour, she mapped the selection. Not a test of PT or marksmanship. Those were prerequisites. This would probe psychological grit, moral elasticity, and the ability to act when everything collapses. Tomorrow, Scenario Alpha, teams of 5. Situations designed so mission parameters and survival instincts collide. You'll be forced to choose who lives and who dies for mission necessity, not friendship. She produced a specialized comma device, quantum encrypted beyond their clearance, and the screen flashed coded coordinates. The nuclear facility the next Death Brigade would have to breach and destroy. Hardened compound, hostile territory. Intelligence estimated 300 fighters, air defenses that rendered aerial insertion impossible, and a 6-week deadline before the material could be weaponized. Sergeant Daniel Torres blinked at the screen, mind already calculating. With those parameters, extraction is impossible. Exactly, Emily said. This is a Death Brigade mission. The plan is not to get you out. It's to get you in, complete the objective, and hold until conventional forces can close. Estimated hold time, 8 to 10 hours. 10 hours against 300. The math was brutal. My team held 6 against 200, Emily said quietly. We had 13 at the start, and it wasn't long before the numbers crushed us. Even the jokester, Brandon Hayes, had no quip. Anyone who wants out may withdraw now, Colonel Harris announced. No shame. No mark. For a long heartbeat, no one moved. Then, one by one, people stepped forward to bow out. A captain with a daughter, a sergeant recently engaged, a corporal who was his parents' only child. Their departures were met with respect. This was not simple bravery. It was a choice no one should have to make. When the last hand fell, 27 remained. Phase 1 begins 0400, Emily said. Rest. You'll need what sleep you can take. As dusk fell, Daniels leaned in. You're running them through Hellgate? A modified Hellgate, she replied. They must know how it feels when intel fails and support doesn't arrive. Better they break here than out there. That night in the mess hall, Emily sifted candidate files long after dinner went cold. Each file felt like a ledger of potential and loss. Her tablet chimed with a classified ping. Authentication she recognized instantly. She opened it to a single line. Package delivered. Hellgate simulation authorized. May God have mercy. Phantom 1, the commander who'd ordered those 13 into that valley 5 years ago, who'd called the mission worth 13 lives. The man who'd promoted and then erased her when she somehow survived. Emily set the tablet down and pushed her untouched meal away. Tomorrow, she thought, she would start the grim work of finding 13 who might die. But this time they would know the score. This time they would choose with eyes open. That had to change something. The next story teases an even stranger twist, a janitor who's actually the owner's daughter, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. First, she had to watch them at 0400 por 0400 arrived like punishment. The candidates gathered in pre-dawn cold, breaths steaming under the desert stars. Emily stood in full kit, rifle slung, every inch the operator she'd been, tremor and all. Scenario Alpha, she announced, cold and immediate. High-value target in a compound 15 clicks north. Friendly asset on site requires extraction. Hostile force, platoon strength. She stopped, meeting several eyes. What intelligence won't tell you, the asset is wounded and slow. The hostiles are actually company strength. The safe house is compromised. You'll learn these facts in sequence, forcing decisions on mission continuation. Miller, leading Alpha Team, raised a hand. ROE, weapons free once you make contact, Emily said. Remember, every round fired speeds hostile reaction. Every casualty degrades you. The asset must survive or the mission fails. Vehicles rolled into the dark toward a training area Fort Thunder had reshaped overnight. As they vanished, Emily turned to the observation post where screens would watch everything, every choice, every failure, every fracture. Sometimes the battlefield isn't sand and steel, it's the fight to prove you even belong there. Emily Carter's fingers curled into fists at her sides, the desert heat pressing down on her like a punishment. Her BDUs clung to her, soaked through, but she refused to waver. Every eye on the training ground was on her, waiting, judging, daring her to falter. She had survived ridicule, commands barked like insults, and stares sharp enough to cut. But this moment was different. This was her reckoning. Jason Miller's voice sliced across the grounds. "Carter, stand down. You've pushed past the limit." His tone carried no softness, only the kind of command that dared anyone to disobey. But Emily's jaw tightened. She wasn't standing down. Not after everything she had endured. Not when quitting would mean they were right about her all along. Master Sergeant Robert Bob Daniels leaned against a post, arms crossed, watching with the calm patience of a man who had seen soldiers either rise or break under pressure. His lips twitched into the faintest trace of a smile. "She's not folding," he muttered, mostly to himself. In his eyes, Emily carried a fire he hadn't seen in years, one that burned brighter with every attempt to crush it. Private Madison Clark's stomach twisted with conflict. She remembered her own nights of silent tears, her own moments of being shoved aside and belittled. Watching Emily stand unyielding in the face of it all sent a shockwave of something unfamiliar through her. Hope. Madison's voice trembled, but only inside her head. "Don't stop, Carter." "Don't give them what they want." Sergeant Daniel Torres shifted uneasily, his smirk gone, his boot dragging against the dirt. Corporal Brandon Hayes shot him a quick glance, their usual swagger fading into silence. For the first time, they weren't laughing, weren't sneering. They were calculating. A gnawing realization stirred inside them both. Maybe this woman they mocked was tougher than they'd ever been. Instructor Matthew Brooks stood nearby, clipboard in hand, but even he had stopped writing. His usual sharp critiques hung unsaid. Instead, his brow furrowed as though he, too, was beginning to wonder if they had underestimated Emily Carter. The silence stretched, thicker than the heat around them. Then Colonel William Harris stepped forward. Every soldier stiffened at his presence, his shadow cutting through the crowd like a final verdict. His voice was steady, authoritative, but there was something beneath it, a note of reluctant respect. "That's enough." His gaze locked on Emily, who stood trembling but unbroken. "Carter, you've made your point, and this unit won't forget it." The weight slid from her at last. Emily collapsed to her knees, breath ragged, muscles screaming, but her spirit untouched. She had carried every ounce of humiliation, every doubt, every test meant to shatter her, and she was still here. The silence that followed was heavier than any insult. For the first time, no one dared to laugh. In that moment, Emily Carter was no longer the outcast. She was the spark, and whether they admitted it aloud or not, everyone on that field knew. The woman they tried to break had just become the soldier they could no longer ignore. Emily dropped to her knees. Sweat, dust, and blood streaked down her face. Her body was breaking, but her eyes, they still burned with fire. Surrender was never an option. A heavy silence swept across the base. The same soldiers who had mocked her now stared as if a legend had come alive before their eyes. Sergeant Daniels lowered his head in quiet respect. Harris's gaze carried pride, and Lieutenant Miller, for the first time, wore the look of shame and realization. The woman they once called a misfit had become the measure of them all, and then the control tower speakers roared to life. Scenario Alpha aborted. Unauthorized breach detected, sirens screamed across the base. Monitors blinked red. Harris barked orders. "Secure the perimeter!" Soldiers scattered in panic, but Emily, her eyes narrowed. A cold smile touched her dust-stained lips as she whispered, "This was never just a training exercise." Could you stand alone against the world, refusing to bow when everyone expects you to? Tell us, what would you do in Emily Carter's shoes? For more stories of courage, defiance, and survival, subscribe to Black Nation Strength, where every tale keeps you on the edge of your seat.